We've been running this together as two complementary organizations in partnership for a long time now. But, prior to 2020, it looked a little bit different, not fundamentally different, but we have sort of changed emphasis and expectations and so on after 2020. And, we're kind of confident and we feel very good about the current sort of direction and iteration and makeup of the program. So just to sort of run briefly through what we saw as some of the challenges that we then convened a fairly large group of people around. Lots of brains got involved in what should the Laureate program evolve into. And you can see there some of the challenges that we had identified. The expected time and travel expectations were somewhat excessive. There were equity issues where we were very aware, partly because the stipend was much less than it is for the first time now. It was $10,000 for the year instead of the current 40. So there were equity issues in terms of just people just couldn't become laureate because of the expectations of the job, but they had to basically work for a living, as we all do, right? But that was definitely an issue that we wanted to address. We also looked at publishing requirements and sort of, just kind of revisited that, especially in light of, changes in 21 and 22 and so on. It's just a different world out there. So we wanted to make sure that we were up to speed with that. And we were asking and requiring things that made sense in our current reality. We definitely identified geographic diversity, diversity on every level, essentially. And then we wanted to make sure that everybody knew how this process was working and how are we as a state selecting a state laureate. And we wanted to make sure that, nobody felt anything was going on behind closed doors and so on, which it definitely is not. But we wanted to make sure that everybody really understood that. And do stop us for questions on the way, or save them for the end, whatever works for you. But this is sort of designed as a bit of a conversation. But Julie.
Great. So how did we gather input to revise the process? Karen touched on this a bit already, but we started with a macro level survey that went out to anyone in either of our organizations' email lists. We also did a lot of social media outreach and got some great feedback, both qualitative and quantitative on the program. We convened a focus group to talk more specifically about some of that feedback that we had received and teasing out some of the nuances for if we did this, would that help solve the problem, and just some brainstorming around potential solutions. And then once we developed the new materials, we asked a number of poets and arts administrators to look at the application process that we had devised. So they could flag any equity issues we might have overlooked, anything that wasn't clear in the materials, and I think with their feedback especially, arrived at a really solid set of guidelines and application materials.
Want me to take it from this one?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so this is just a quick kind of overview of the key changes. The honorarium I did mention is now $40,000 annually, which I believe is the largest in the country by quite a long way. And we basically went to the legislature and asked for this money and were successful in getting it. So for us, this is transformative for this laureate position, and it was absolutely critical if we were going to be able to emphasize equity in the process as we agreed we wanted to. So and travel and project expenses are also over the top of the 40,000, and we have at least 5 hours a week of administrative support. And at Artois we have Britt is our lead, and over in Humanities Washington, Tom plays a good role. So we feel like we're really helping. We hope we're supporting this program in the way that it deserves. We also clarified the expected number of events per month, to 2 a month, at least 2 a month. Now, I have to say most laureates do a lot more than that, but we wanted to say at least this month, this much. And some of this was based on the fact that we've had really incredible laureates and who have just given their heart and soul to this program for the state. But we didn't want it to become something that it was expected that you had to do dozens of events or go to every county and so on. You have to do a certain amount, but we didn't want everybody saying, well, the previous laureate, met with 120,000 people. I've got to meet that, so every laureate is different, and we wanted to make that okay within the program. Poets working in disciplines beyond the traditional publishing may apply. So this could be a spoken word poet, for example, is just as valid as somebody who has published lots of books. We did definitely prioritize geographic and racial diversity in the program, in the selection process. And what that will mean is that if push came to shove, we would look at where the current laureate is from. And if there were two like identical finalists, the geographic location might tip things one way or the other a little bit. But, we want to try and really ensure that the laureates represent the state as a whole, and that it isn't all West Side based and so on. So we're trying to be as thoughtful about that as possible. And then last but not least, one of the largest things is we used to ask for the applicant laureates to identify some kind of project that that they would do if they were selected. So rather than put people through, a lot of planning around a project in the application process, we changed that to say, be thinking about it essentially, but you don't need to articulate that. If you get selected, then we want to know what project you'll be doing. But we didn't want to have a laureate spend a lot of time, a prospective laureate spend a lot of time developing something, and then they don't get selected. So we're trying to be thoughtful about the amount of work that the process of applying to be the laureate takes, mindful of the fact that there's only one laureate. So, most people will not actually be selected. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, back to you, Julie.
Great. So eligibility, folks who are eligible to apply, we do want poets to have experience and an established body of work. This is not necessarily considered to be the best poet in the state, but we want this person to be held in very high esteem in the poetry community and respected by their peers and others who do this for a living. So definitely need to have an established body of work. We want someone who is committed to promoting equity and inclusion through the arts and humanities. And because the position requires so much coordination with folks who are interested in hosting the laureate, and then you have this project layered on top of that, it really is critical that the person who takes on this role has strong program management and project planning experience. So we do ask for references who can speak to that, and for the applicants to address that in their application. The project is a public outreach project that complements all of the requests for the poet laureate to appear all around the state. So you almost have these two types of activities that the laureate takes on, the public role, and then more of a project-oriented role. Claudia Castro Luna, for example, did a One River, Many Voices project where she engaged poets along the Columbia River to talk about the significance of the river, and then published that in a book. The current poet laureate, Rena Priest, is working on an anthology related to salmon. She felt that was a really important issue to highlight, given salmon's importance to us all, but particularly her tribe and the indigenous peoples of Washington State. So, and as Karin mentioned, we don't want a lot of planning to happen before a laureate is selected. We do ask for some ideas for directions a project might go should someone be selected for the laureate. But the planning and the details can come later after the laureate is selected. So first and foremost, we want you to just be willing to take on a separate public outreach project. And as Karin also mentioned too, we do want to make sure that communities around the state feel like this program is theirs and that at different points in time, their communities are represented. So we'll look, it won't be the primary determinant of which laureate is selected, but as Karin said, it could certainly help tip the scales if a laureate applies from an area that hasn't previously had a laureate representing them. So thanks, Britt. All done.
All right, and I think we've covered this a little bit. So the new honoraria is $40,000 a year plus $3,500 for travel and project expenses. And we do, though, encourage host communities, if they can, to provide additional honoraria and stipends and so on. And many communities can provide something, you know, whether it's perhaps overnight accommodation or whatever it might be, to, you know, sort of further amplify the remuneration to the laureate. But at the same time, we also say that that you would not be unable to have the laureate visit because you simply cannot provide an honoraria or a stipend. So we don't want that to be a barrier. But you know, overall, we found many communities, whether libraries or whatever they might be, can frequently provide something in addition. And then admin support of up to 5 hours a week. And we found that's worked pretty well. If more is needed around a special project or whatever it may be, we come together around that too. And of course, you know, the year will ebb and flow. Sometimes will require more support perhaps, and other times a little less. So it kind of balances itself out as we go along. But we do everything we can to make this work for the laureate.
Great. And again, we've touched on some of this before, but just to reiterate, we ask that the laureate be able to commit to at least 2 in-person or online readings or programs per month. We want there to be a variety of populations, geographies, cultural communities that are served through this. Some laureates choose to chunk their travel out in little tours around the state, building different appearances around kind of an anchor event. Others are just more responsive to what comes in and will go to a community for a single event. So it really depends on what the laureate's schedule and travel capabilities might be. Zoom has also been a great tool, and with the pandemic, people were forced to get much more comfortable with that. And so a lot of our laureates the past couple of years, past 2 laureates have done quite a bit of Zoom work as well, and that's been quite effective. Again, the outreach project is something that the laureate suggests as part of the application process, but is fleshed out, if you will, with help from Karin and me and our teams, just getting the support and the connections in place necessary to make this project go. And we also occasionally, if the project seems like it has a hook that we can fundraise around, we've also written grants for those projects and help the laureate secure additional funding. The stipend is not meant to fund the project. It's separate from the stipend to compensate for the time that the laureate spends doing all of this work. So we look for additional project funds for that as well.
And now we'll talk a little bit about the application process. And this is how we will be evaluating, you know, the different parts of the application. So really the main part is you, the poet, you know, your proof of accomplishment, you know, the kind of work you've done as a poet. So that is number one. Then 20 points goes to the diversity, equity, and inclusion component that we ask you to address. Then your capacity to do outreach and promotion and just basically sort of, and project management, all of those things are something that we'll look at as part of the application process.
Great. So a couple of you, or at least one of you, mentioned that you're thinking about nominating a poet in your community. So we'll, obviously there's two ways poets can be, their names can be submitted into this process. You can self-nominate, which is what the majority of applicants do, I would say. But third-party nominations are also possible. There are some people that just really have an aversion to nominating themselves for a role like this. So you can bring in a friend if you want to, and have the friend nominate you. Really, each type of application is considered equally. There's no advantage to doing one or the other. One thing to say, though, is that if you are thinking about nominating a poet who is not yourself, definitely connect with that person ahead of time to make sure that they are interested and able to serve. It would be really difficult to complete this application without their participation. So definitely need to do that. So we've mentioned several times poets from the region other than the region of the current poet laureate are given priority. Our committee reviews all of the applications. It's a committee of poets, arts administrators, and others from all across the state, including a representative of Humanities Washington's board and a representative from ArtsWA's board. Those folks review and score the applications using an online system. And then we take the top 2 or 3 candidates, depending on how things are looking, and interview those folks via video conference with the panel and then Karen and I. We may bring folks in for in-person interviews. That would be our hope. But we have the video conference as a fallback should things go, got to plan for contingencies these days. And then once the committee panel decides on a candidate, they recommend that person for appointment to the governor, and the governor makes the official appointment.
So we have a great selection committee. We really work hard on this each go round, and we sort of, pick from a diverse selection or selection of poets or scholars or educators, arts administrators, and so on. And geographic and cultural diversity of the panelists is also prioritized to make sure we've got voices from all across the state. And then we also do limit the amount of participation a panelist can have, simply because we want to give other people a chance, but we also don't want people to get too ensconced in the idea that they get to help select the laureate every time or whatever. And panelists, of course, fully understand this. So at least half of the panel rotates each biennium, because this is a 2-year appointment.
All right, so these are the important dates you need to keep in mind. Friday, December 2nd at 2022, this year at 5 p.m. is the deadline for nominations. The application system is open now. If you have any trouble with that, just raise your hand, give a holler, and our teams will be happy to figure out whatever technical difficulties you might be having. So we'll have that deadline be December 2nd. The committee will get to work reviewing applications, beginning to formulate a ranked list of folks according to their application materials that they submitted. And then on or by, could happen before, but by January 12th, Thursday, folks will be notified of their status, whether they'll be moving forward into the interview process or not. Wednesday, January 18th is when we've set finalist interviews. So I would encourage anyone interested in applying to block out that day just in case. That is not something that we are going to be able to move. So you need to be available on that day for an interview if you are selected as a finalist. And then the term officially begins right in the middle of National Poetry Month on April 15th. So we work with laureates ahead of time to have there be an effective transition of power from the current laureate to the new laureate, and lots of support in there. So even though the term officially begins on April 15th, that transition work starts in advance of that, really from the moment you are selected and governor has appointed the new laureate.
Perhaps one thing to add to that transition process is that we started off kind of quietly. We don't tell the world on January, the middle of January, that the so-and-so is the laureate. We hold off on that really so the new laureate doesn't get inundated with immediate requests for, presentations or whatever it might be. We found that if the sooner people know, the quicker they're going to be after you. So we try and have a transition time that is quite gentle. And we also have a very thoughtful, well put together communications plan that people like Michael and Julie's team at Humanities Washington will lead for us to, effectively and thoughtfully get the word out when the time is right. But we want to pick that time rather than, Joe Public jumping on it too soon. And I think we're at Q&A time, so we would love to take any questions or any thoughts. Ariane.
Hi there. So on the submittable for the application, it looks like there might be some issues with the forms. I don't know if that's just me or if that's everyone, but there's like the DEI section, it says answer following questions, and it has lines, but it doesn't actually have any questions there.
And that I can see how that would look super strange. What you have to do at the very top is select whether you're nominating yourself or another person, and then that will auto-populate the application from that point.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Otherwise, it looks really strange.
Good to know. Great. Thank you.
Is that something we can clean up a little bit, Britt and or Michael?
There's no way I can put some instructions at the top so people aren't confused, but we do have to keep it streamlined to those two routes. Yeah.
Let's do the instructions. This is actually a good moment for us to learn too what's working or what might not be. Marie.
Yes, hi. Regarding the work samples, it says please upload up to 3 work samples. Examples include published or unpublished poetry up to 4 pages, photos, or other examples. So if the 4 pages would be in one sample, is that correct? So it could be a photo, 4 pages of poetry, and something else.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I had a question in terms of the time commitment. Do you consider this, or is the expectation like a 3/4 time job or full-time in terms of the hours each week, or does it just depend on like somebody's experience in project management, things like that?
I would, Cara, maybe I could take a stab at that. I guess, first of all, definitely no expectation that it's a full-time job or a 3/4 time, even a half-time job. It is, we want the compensation to be fair for the work that the laureate puts in. And some folks are teaching, some folks are working part-time somewhere else. We've really had all different types of kind of gig work happening to make this possible for the person who takes on the role. So there is no right answer. I think I would say it would be difficult for someone to work full-time somewhere else and do this job. That I would say would be difficult. But in terms of a minimum expectation, it's really about the two events per month, plus the project, and that can be scaled to be as ambitious or limited as someone would like it to be. So.
Troy, go ahead.
Hi, y'all. Thank you for the presentation. Actually, the last question that was answered is answering part of my first question, which was around, do you all encourage or discourage having a full-time job while having this role? And I think that answer that was just provided is very helpful. My second question was around the events and the readings. I was just curious around who like how the setup of those readings and events happen. Is it expected for the Poet Laureate to be in care of setting them all up, or will it be in partnership with you all as well? I imagine there will be a lot of requests coming in, but wondering about the other opportunities. Or will the Poet Laureate be reaching out to others to try to set them up, or a combination of things perhaps?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Julie, maybe because you and Tom have been managing that piece up till now, which may or may not change, but why don't we describe the process for us?
Yeah. So we have had a system in place where folks who want to host the Laureate can submit a request on our website, and it comes into Tom. He aggregates them, and what we've been doing with the current Poet Laureate is meeting with them every few weeks to a month to basically say, yes, I want to do this one. No, I can't do that one. I'd like to work with this group, but that date's not going to work. So can we talk to them about this? It is impossible to do every single event that is requested, just impossible. And we discourage our laureates from thinking they need to accept every invitation extended to them. But it really runs, it's a range of different types of things. It could be a poetry festival. It could be a writing workshop with teenagers in Walla Walla. It could be speaking to a college class. It could be
opening the legislature.
It could be opening the legislature, absolutely. It could be a community festival related to salmon, and because Rena is writing about salmon, she's been asked to present there. So it really is a huge range of different types of events.
I think one thing, Troy, is you will not be short of invitations. They come pouring in.
Yeah. And that's also not to say Laureate shouldn't be proactive about what they want to do. I think protecting your time so that you can reach out to the audiences that are most important to you, and maybe being proactive in that regard, is as important as prioritizing the requests that just come in off the website.
Since it was mentioned a couple times, I'm just wondering, I don't know if anyone else is wondering this, the geographic consideration for selection. I was wondering, Karin or Julie, could you speak to that as it relates to like where the current Poet Laureate is hailing from and how that might affect the application process?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, Rena is from the Bellingham area. She's part of the Lummi tribe. So, if somebody from Bellingham or that area came in, that could be a bit of a consideration. It certainly would not be a disqualifier, but, if push came to shove, it could tip things one way or the other.
I'm going out on a limb here, but I could also see a situation where if we had someone, I'm just picking randomly, no agenda here at all, but if say we had someone from Walla Walla apply and it was between them and someone in Seattle, we probably lean towards the Walla Walla poet because we've not had anyone from that community in this position before. So it's hard to know exactly what's going to come your way, but again, a key goal of the program is to make everyone in the state feel that they could be part of it.
Harriet, did you have your hand up? No, go ahead.
I did, yes. So I just wanted to say, I mean, this is my first knowing really about this whole process and everything. And the person that I wanted to nominate, is on board with it and very excited. I really liked how you allowed for collaboration on the application itself, because I couldn't have been able to supply all that information. So, and that involves them then also. So anyway, I so far the application process has looked really, very straightforward, and I just really appreciate that. And I just want to give you some feedback on that. So thank you.
That's good to hear. Thanks.
Yeah, and that is critical. We know that you can't, be writing for the person you're nominating in its entirety. So, well, good. I'm glad it's working. You never know with these things.
Yeah, very, very
Thank
well.
you for that. Thank you.
I think maybe I would add one other thing too, is, many great poets will apply for this opportunity. So we always tell people, if you don't get it, don't let that dissuade you from applying again. There's only one state poet laureate at any given time. So do feel free to, if you don't get it, don't feel completely despondent. Just, apply again, please.
Yeah. I would double, triple emphasize that.
Any other questions or areas that seem still not clear? We do have one more of these sessions on Monday. You're welcome to join again if you think of things, or be in touch with either Julie or me or Britt or Michael or Tom, and feel free to ask questions and follow up. We're all pretty available.
Yeah, and my email's on the Poet Laureate webpage at the bottom. Thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. Any final thoughts, Julie?
Just thank you for your interest, everyone. And please help spread the word if you are not looking at applying yourself. But if you are, we look forward to seeing your application.